Welcome to part 2 of what's new in CabWriter 4. What I want to do now is show you a couple of new construction options that we provided. And these are sort of aimed at crown molding or lighting or something like that. But I'm going to start off by introducing you to this, I call it a demo model because it's just a collection of different types of cabinets. What I'm going to do is go to the upper cabinets. This applies only to upper cabinets. And there are two new defaults here called top inset and extend sides. So let me play with the extend sides first. I'm going to extend sides by 2 inches. So I'll just enter 2 inches, update, close this, and I'm going to choose that cabinet, and that cabinet, and this cabinet. And I will say CabWriter, redraw selected cabinets. And I'm not going to use the stored defaults. And so let's look at what happened here. It literally took the sides and extended them. It was just like doing a push-pull on all of the sides and extending them 2 inches. The nice part about that is you can use this as attachment parts for crown molding or other things that you want to construct up here. This works with frameless cabinets as well. Makes no difference whether you're talking face frame or frameless. It works with frameless cabinets as well. So let me now show you a slightly different construction option. I'm going to put this back to 0 and I'm going to make this 1. Top inset 1 inch. I'll update it. And I'll select the refrigerator cabinet and redraw it. And I will not use the stored defaults. That's interesting. Oh, let me back up. And let me, first of all, before I change that, let me retrieve the cabinet defaults here. And then go and inset 1 inch. Update, close, and redraw this cabinet. And I will not use the stored defaults. I'm going to use what I just changed. And notice what this does is it insets the top by 1 inch. And if I take the doors off, the upper doors, you can see I still have the top is inset from the bottom of the rail as well. And that, what you could do, by the way, is make these cabinets slightly higher and make this slightly wider. And you could make this a 3-inch rail and make the cabinets 1 inch higher, and then inset this 1 inch or 2. And it'll give you plenty of room for things like inset lighting up here, or anything else you want to put up there. Now I'm going to I'll select this cabinet and get its defaults. And I'm going to inset the top by 1 inch and extend the sides by 2. Update it. Redraw this cabinet. No. Okay, so now let's look at what happened. I have the combination now of the sides being extended 2 inches from the top of the cabinet and the top being inset. These things work independent of one another and also inclusive of one another. This is a handy way to structure things like coat molding or other things that you have to put above cabinets or provide attachment points for. Okay. I've restored all the cabinets to their original drawing. And I'm going to change this set of base cabinets down here to demonstrate the next change in CabWriter 4. I'm going to load the CabWriter Imperial frameless settings. This is pure frameless cabinets. I'll load those. And I'm going to leave them alone for the moment. I'm just going to go with the pure frameless settings. And I'll select all of these base cabinets down here. And I'm going to redraw those. And I'm going to say no. I want to change them to frameless cabinets, so I'm not going to use their stored defaults. Okay. Now this is a little strange because some of these are one cabinet and some are another cabinet, like right here. This cabinet is different from this cabinet. In fact, if I say select CabWriter select cabinet, you notice that stands alone. This one stands alone. That one stands alone. All of these stand alone. So this is a little different, little strange, but that's not the point I'm going to make here. I want to look at the doors and draw fronts. They're simple slab doors and draw fronts right now. And if I wanted to cut these on a CNC machine, in other words, if this were MDF material, which I don't believe it is right at the moment, but for the moment we'll just pretend it is, I could cut these on a CNC machine. However, my edge grain would be exposed, and I'd want to put some banding on there. But if I cut them to this dimension and then put banding on there, I'm going to have problems. It's going to encroach on the gap. So what I can do is I have a new setting called Enable CNC Cutting. I'm going to say yes. And I will then go to the Cut List tab, and where it says Slab Door and Draw Undersizing, and this applies to either trim or edge banding thickness. I've already got in here 3 millimeters, and I'm going to leave it at 3, but I could make it 1/4 of an inch. I could make it whatever I want. Whatever it is, I'm going to trim these doors with to hide the edge profile. So I'm going to leave it at 3 millimeter. I'll say update. And I'm going to say redraw these cabinets. No. Let's see what happens. Notice that I now have edge banding all the way around on every draw and every door, including the diagonal over here. The size of the door and draw hasn't changed. It's just that the core of the door without the banding has changed. So I can cut it on the CNC machine, put the banding on, and then it'll bring it to the proper size. So for those of you who are going to cut slab doors and draws on your CNC machine or on a CNC machine you may have access to, this is an easy way to account for banding or trim. Okay. Up till now in CabWriter, we've always represented draws by simple 3D draw boxes. A lot of people have asked that we represent them as five-part draw box. The problem is that there are so many ways of building draw boxes that we couldn't, provide you all methods of drawing draw boxes. So, and besides, most or a good deal of cabinet makers have their draws and draw fronts and door fronts made by a third party. But on CabWriter 4, we decided to compromise a little bit. We decided to provide you 5 different draw box styles that you can pre or post-process CabWriter with and convert these boxes into 5-part boxes. It's truly a post-processing process. In other words, when you're done with your model, and before you do create, you may actually want to create production documentation twice. You may want to do it the first time to simply get the number of draw slides and things like that. The number of draw slides for your boxes and the types of draw slides and the size of the draw slides. And then do it a second time to actually get the individual parts for the draw boxes. What I'm going to do now is show you how to use the tool that converts these to 5-part draw boxes. And it's here under the Draw menu, CabWriter, Create Draw Box Parts. And it opens this dialog box, Draw Box Type dialog box. There's 2 ways to do this. One is I can do it by scene, or I can do it by selection. I'm going to do it by selection at first to show you each of the 5 types. So I'll choose selection, and I'm going to start with this draw box right there. And I'll choose the first type, which is the butt captured sides. And I'll show what that means momentarily. This is a picture of the butt style draw, the captured sides. Notice if you look at the sides here, they've been captured by the front and back of the box. You'll also notice, looking at the bottom, that there are notches here for draw slides if you use that type of draw slide. And again, the sides are captured by the front and back. You'll also notice that the draw bottom exists in a dado And the data is in all four parts, the front, back, and the two sides. And so to define this, we start out with the data width. Now, what does data width mean? Well, all you have to do is click in here, and it'll show you what data width means. Data width is this dimension right here. Next, you need the data depth. These may seem obvious, but to some people they may not be. This is the data depth. And this one in particular may not be obvious. Support width. Support width is simply the width of this piece down here that is actually supporting the weight of the draw bottom. And while you're picking these dimensions for the side, they'll be the same dimensions for the front and back. In the bottom edge gap, I've chosen nothing here for the moment. The bottom edge gap is this gap right here. That is between the draw bottom and the back of the dado. I've chosen nothing at the bottom, but you probably want to choose something just to allow for a little bit of glue or something if you're going to use material here that doesn't expand and contract. If you're using plywood or something like that, you don't have to worry too much about that. There is also a gap here, but that gap is created by the size of this dado and the thickness of the bottom. Okay, slider notch. The slider thickness is how thick is the actual slider, and the slider width is the width of the slider, and you can enter those two values right here. The rabbet, tongue, and groove don't apply to this style of draw, so this is disabled. This is the front, back, and sides material and resizing. So the type is rough lumber maple. We're going to resize the thickness by 5/8 of an inch, I guess, and resize the length and width by 1/4. You may not resize at all if you're going to cut these on a, if these are sheet good materials and you're going to cut them on a CNC. Same thing for the bottom down here. So now that I filled in all of this, I'm just going to say draw, and you'll see I have my first part. And again, these are captured sides, simple butt joints, and the bottom is captured in this dado all the way around. If I unlock this and pull it apart, you'll see the dado's in the sides as well. Okay. Now I'm going to select this one. I'm going to go to Draw, CabWriter, Create Box Parts. I'm going to do it by selection. And I'm going to do the second one here. Say OK. And I'm going to use the same method here for defining all of this. And I'm going to use the same defaults. So I'll say Draw. And now I have my second type here, and I'll go through these in a second. But for now, let me just draw them. I'll say Draw, CabWriter, Draw Box Parts, by selection, and I'll use the third type. And say Draw. And I'll do this one. By selection. Use the fourth type called rabbet. And finally, by selection, the fifth type tongue and groove. By the way, notice the tongue and groove. You've got to fill in these, and so that's the tongue thickness and the tongue length. Okay, and I'll say draw. All right, now I'm going to look at each one of these. As I said, this is a simple butt joint, and the sides are captured. This is exactly the same, except it's the front and back that are captured by the sides. But again, butt joint. This one is different. No, actually, we're looking at the back of the cabinet here. Oh, I guess we can't tell what we're looking at. But what happens with this one is the draw bottom comes all the way to the front edge of the front and back, so that you don't have to worry about the slider notch. This is the rabbet joint. Notice this is a simple rabbet, both front and back. And again, you can't see them here, but the bottom's captured by a dado that goes all the way around. And finally, this is tongue and groove. We're looking at the back. Notice the slider notches are here, and the back and the front are actually have a tongue and groove joinery right here. So that's the 5 different types. Interesting that this one, for those of you who are going to build your own and do dovetail joinery, this one right here actually gives you the correct dimensions for dovetail joinery if you set up these the rabbet joints correctly. You can picture tails and pins here. So this gives you the correct dimensions. That's the one you'd want to use if you're going to do dovetail joinery, and however you do your dovetails. I'm sure you do them all by hand. But in any case. So now what I want to do is back up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whoops, 5. And I'm going to now do all of these. The way I do that is I say CabWriter, draw, CabWriter, draw box parts, and I select scene this time. And the scene I'm going to select is the purchase parts scene. That's the one that these boxes are on. Now, like I said, you don't want to do this until after you've done created a production documentation that included the draw box parts, because that's where your information about the slides, the types of slides, the vendor, the dimension of the slides, and the quantity will be captured. So you want to do that first. All right, so now I'm going to change these all to, I'm going to make them all tongue and groove, just to show you that it takes a little while for that. That's the most complex joinery. And I'll use the same defaults that I've been using. This will take a while, so be patient. Okay, that actually took about almost a minute. And it drew all of the boxes. By the way, at this point, you can change the dimension of draws. You can make them shallower, you can make them taller, you can make them deeper, whatever you want to do. You could change them. You couldn't do that when they were in the simple box form. But you can when they're in this form. And now you can include these parts in your cut list. You can make a different scene or change the name of this scene from purchase parts to draw boxes or something and include them in your cut list or in your DXF scene if you want to cut them on a DXF machine. I'm sorry, on a CNC machine. So at this point, they're like any other CabWriter part, and you can include them in cut lists or create DXF files for them. I'm going to undo this and save it so my file goes back to its original. All right, so that brings us to the end of part 2. There are a lot of other changes and fixes in CabWriter 4, too many to go through in a video like this. But you'll see them as you go along. And I hope you actually enjoy and like what we've done to CabWriter 3 to bring it up to what we now call CabWriter 4. Have a good day.